A public war between two Ryder Cup legends just blew open, and one of them threw the first punch in front of every reporter in the room. This is not about LIV Golf versus the PGA Tour anymore. This is about a man who looked his Ryder Cup teammate in the eye and said, "Prove it." And the teammate he said it to had the audacity to say no. There are $3 million in fines, a 2027 Ryder Cup berth, and the entire moral authority of European golf sitting in the middle of this. 8 players made one choice, one player made a completely different one. And the aftermath turned a press conference in South Africa into the most uncomfortable room in professional golf. Honestly, I think Rory McIlroy was completely right, and I think Jon Rahm knew it, which is exactly why his response was so revealing. Was Rory right to call Rahm out publicly, or did he cross the line between teammate and critic? Drop it in the comments right now, and if you want the full inside story on how this feud actually started months before anyone reported it, subscribe, because this goes deeper than one press conference.
Step all the way back from this. Because what this dispute is actually exposing is something more uncomfortable than one player's contract standoff. The Ryder Cup has always been held up as the event that proves professional golf is about more than money. It is the proof. Every time someone says the sport has lost its soul, someone points to Ryder Cup week and says, "Look at that. Look at what these players are willing to go through for nothing but a badge and a team photograph." Jon Rahm played in the 2025 Ryder Cup at Bethpage. He was magnificent. He played every session. He wept during the ceremony. The commitment looked real. And then, when it cost him 6 events and $3 million to protect the right to play in the next one, he said no. That is not a story about contract terms. That is a story about what happens when the price of principle becomes a real number with a dollar sign in front of it. You can love the Ryder Cup and still not want to pay $3 million for it. That is a human reaction. But you cannot call yourself a different kind of player than the Americans who took a paycheck and then refuse to pay a fine that protects the very competition you claim to love. You cannot hold both positions, not when the money is this real and the Ryder Cup at Adair Manor is this close. Is Jon Rahm's fight with the DP World Tour a matter of principle, or is it just about the money? And does it actually matter which one it is? Drop your answer right now. The saga officially ended. Rahm eventually reached a deal, paying his fines, accepting 5 events instead of 6, and securing his eligibility for Adair Manor 2027. McIlroy said the words he was required to say. He welcomed the resolution. But something did not reset when that deal was signed. The "prove it" comment is still out there. Rahm's response, that McIlroy's statement would make more sense if all 12 of us were being asked to pay, is still out there. Burmester's South Africa press conference moment is still out there. These men will stand on the same first tee at Adair Manor in 2027 and pretend none of this happened. I genuinely do not believe they can. If you want the inside story when that first tee moment finally arrives, subscribe, because the 2027 Ryder Cup is shaping up to be the most complicated European team in history before anyone has hit a shot. This story is not over.
There is one player whose decision makes Rahm's rejection look even worse by comparison: Tyrrell Hatton. Hatton is not Rory McIlroy. He is not a diplomatic ambassador for the sport. He is famously blunt, famously frustrated on the course, famously the last player you would expect to quietly absorb a $3 million fine and sign a compliance deal without a fight. But Hatton signed. He paid. He withdrew his appeal. He committed to the DPWT's terms. And Hatton and Rahm were in the same position. Both had joined LIV. Both had accrued major fines. Both were offered the same deal structure. One signed, one called it extortion. That is not a philosophical dispute about contract terms. That is 2 players with the same situation making opposite decisions, in one of them telling his captain, his organization, and his teammates that his number was higher. The European Ryder Cup team has always operated on a different moral contract than the Americans. Through every LIV war conversation, through every pay-to-play scandal, through 3 years of defections and legal battles, Europe held on to one thing: we play for something bigger than money. Hatton proved it. Rahm made it a negotiation. If you were Luke Donald, the European Ryder Cup captain, would you still want Rahm in that team at Adair Manor if he eventually pays his fines? Or has he damaged the locker room trust beyond what any deal can fix? Be honest. Drop it in the comments. Here is where the timeline gets brutal. After Rahm rejected the initial deal in February, he dropped his appeal in March, but still refused to pay the fines. The DPWT kept sanctioning him for further LIV events. By the time the dust settled, Rahm had been hit 3 additional times, and the fines grew. He went from $3 million to well over $2.5 million outstanding. Some outlets reported the final number exceeded $3 million all in. Meanwhile, McIlroy called it a shame in March.
Then in South Africa, when Rahm showed up to play his LIV event, a reporter mentioned McIlroy's name at a press conference, and LIV player Dean Burmester, South African and proud of it, cut the conversation dead. Bringing up Rory here after his comments about South Africa is not a great idea. 8 of the 9 LIV players offered that deal signed it. 8 out of 9. In a group of players who had collectively fought the DPWT for 3 years, 8 decided the Ryder Cup was worth the price. 1 did not. 1 is a lot of loneliness on a team built entirely on the idea that Europe plays for each other.
Now, here is Jon Rahm's side of this, because it is not as simple as the headlines made it look. Rahm's argument was specific. The DPWT was asking for 6 events per season, 2 of which the tour would dictate. The minimum membership requirement in the regulations is 4 events. Rahm's position, lower it to 4 and he'd sign the same night. The tour said no. Rahm called that extortion. On the surface, that sounds reasonable. 4 versus 6, 2 dictated events. Pick your battles. But here is what Rahm was actually asking for. He was asking the DP World Tour, an organization he has openly defied since 2023, an organization he cost nearly $3 million in lost fines revenue while his appeal dragged on, to hand him a discounted membership deal that 8 of his LIV colleagues did not receive. He wanted the benefit of European Tour membership, Ryder Cup eligibility, and the freedom to play 14 LIV events a year, in exchange for the absolute minimum the rules technically permit. There's a question here that nobody in the golf media is willing to ask out loud. At what point does Jon Rahm's Ryder Cup loyalty become a negotiating tool rather than a genuine commitment? He's used his desire to play in the Ryder Cup as leverage in every single conversation with the DPWT. I want to play. I want to be there. I want to keep my membership. But the moment the deal required something he didn't want to give, 2 extra events at the tour's choosing, he called it extortion and walked away. Now here's the part nobody is talking about. The 2027 Ryder Cup is at Adair Manor, in Ireland. That is not a neutral venue for either man in this dispute. For Rahm, who has always claimed his commitment to European golf is genuine, refusing to pay $3 million to play at a Ryder Cup in Ireland, on European soil, while collecting a guaranteed LIV paycheck, is a contradiction the size of a gulf. And Rory McIlroy, a Northern Irishman who has waited his entire career for a Ryder Cup on the island of Ireland, watches Rahm stonewall the very organization that would put them both on that first tee at Adair Manor. That is the real story, and it has been hiding in plain sight for months. Imagine you're Rory McIlroy. You have one chance left, maybe, at a home Ryder Cup, the one you've dreamed about since you were a kid, and the teammate you need most, the one who has been beside you in every match that mattered, is too busy fighting a billing dispute to guarantee he'll be standing next to you when it finally happens.
Rory McIlroy is the 2025 Masters champion. He is the most prominent ambassador professional golf has had in a generation. He is not someone who picks fights carelessly. Every word out of his mouth in a press conference is measured, deliberate, and fully understood before he says it. So when he said, "There are 2 guys that can prove it," that was not a slip, that was a choice. Let's understand what McIlroy was actually doing. Team USA at the 2025 Ryder Cup at Bethpage Black made history for the wrong reasons. They became the first American team in the event's history to receive payment for their participation. The European response, from McIlroy, from the captains, from everyone, was righteous. We play for the badge. We play for the honor. We would pay to play. That moral high ground was the entire foundation of Europe's identity as a Ryder Cup team. And then Rahm, the man who played in that very Ryder Cup while his fines were being appealed, refused to settle his bill. McIlroy's "prove it" was not a casual comment. It was McIlroy calling Rahm out for standing on that moral high ground with $3 million of unpaid obligations and no intention of paying them. It was McIlroy saying, "The honor of the Ryder Cup costs something. Pay it." You've been in 4 Ryder Cups. You've been in the winning team photograph 3 times. You've walked up the 18th at Bethpage Black wearing that European badge, while the DP World Tour had $3 million of unresolved fines with your name on them. You played in that Ryder Cup because your appeal kept you eligible, and now the appeal is gone, the fines are still there, and you're calling the deal you were offered extortion. Rory McIlroy has been your teammate. He defended this tour through 3 years of the LIV War. He gave up more endorsement money than most players will earn in a career by staying, and he watched you collect LIV checks, skip DPWT events, and still cash the Ryder Cup credential. He had enough. Was Rory right to call Rahm out publicly, or should that conversation have stayed private between teammates? And does the $3 million price tag change your answer? Drop it below. I read every single one.
Let's lay out exactly what happened and why it matters, because the mainstream coverage has been missing the piece that changes everything. Jon Rahm joined LIV Golf in December 2023. When he left, the DP World Tour, the European circuit that controls Ryder Cup eligibility for European players, started applying its conflicting event rules, fines for every LIV event played opposite a DPWT tournament, no exceptions. The rules existed before Rahm signed with LIV. He knew them. By early 2026, Rahm had racked up over $3 million in penalties. In February 2026, the DPWT offered an olive branch. 8 LIV players, including Rahm's LIV teammate and fellow Ryder Cup stalwart Hatton, accepted a deal: pay the outstanding fines, commit to 6 DPWT events per season, 2 of the tour's choosing, drop your appeal. In return, conditional releases to play LIV freely, full tour membership retained, Ryder Cup eligibility secured. 8 players signed. 1 player did not. Jon Rahm rejected the deal. His argument: the tour was asking for 6 events when the minimum membership requirement is 4. He called it extortion. He said he would not pay. He said he would continue his appeal. And then, Rory McIlroy, at the Dubai Desert Classic in January 2026, was asked whether Rahm and Hatton should just pay the fines. He didn't hesitate. He looked straight at the reporter and said, "We went really hard on the Americans about being paid to play the Ryder Cup, and we also said that we would pay to play in Ryder Cups. There are 2 guys that can prove it." 2 sentences, 14 words of pressure, delivered in public, aimed directly at his teammates. The fuse was lit.